hear a whisper calling your name. Run.
Many of us grew up on stories told under thin blankets and dim lamps, whispers that made the dark feel full rather than empty. This is one of those stories. It's about a tree so old, the village measures itself by its shadow. They called it the banyan that never sleeps. In a remote part of India was a small village along a river bend, where paddy fields lay like a green ocean under the moon. At the edge of the village, where the path narrowed and the lamps went out, the banyan rose, a giant stitched together from roots and air. Its branches braided the sky. Its aerial roots hung like ropes, reaching down as if to touch the living soil. The elders said the tree had been there longer than any memory. It shaded festivals and funerals alike. It sheltered prayers, and the birds refused to nest high in its canopy. Children were told, with serious faces and hushed voices, to be home before the light left the sky. Travellers were warned not to sleep beneath its roots, not after dusk. One evening, a young man named Arjun was walking to his parents' home from the bus stop. He was the postmaster's son who lived in a faraway town and worked for a Sarkari Babu as a typist. He believed in logic, modern science, and the reliability of facts rather than the uncertainty of superstition. Still, he was careful not to mock the old cautions. Respect, he thought, kept simple things gentle. That night, fog slid over the fields like a slow hand. The road disappeared into pale cotton, and the village lamps were distant halos. Arjun's feet were heavy after a long, arduous journey by train, bus, and boat to reach his village. He tightened his shawl and quickened his step, but the fog made the familiar road strange. Partway home, he found himself under the banyan. The roots formed a kind of hollow there, a small shelter from the wet. He should have kept walking. He knew the stories, but cold and fatigue are persuasive things. He sat, set his borrowed lantern down, and propped his back against the broad trunk. For a while there was only the sound of the lantern and the occasional croak of a frog. Then, from somewhere above, a single sound, like breath over a glass, almost a name.
Arjun.
He turned. Nothing. A branch swayed, but no wind came. He told himself it was the language of leaves, the old sounds of wood and night. He pinched the lantern to steady it and laughed softly at his own nerves. Then another voice joined, softer, like someone speaking through cloth.
Stay.
It did not sound malicious at first. It sounded like an invitation, a softness that appealed to the tired. Arjun felt the word like a finger on his collar, a slow twist that made the breath catch in his chest. More voices followed, not many, but enough to make the sound round. They moved around the roots and along the hanging cords of the banyan like shadows finding shape. The lantern trembled in his hand. He tried to stand, but the roots beneath seemed to press at his shoes, asking him to stay a moment longer. In the dim, the roots looked like arms. It is easy, in that thin light, for ordinary things to take on other shapes. Arjun remembered the warnings then, quick as a struck match. He did not know why he had sat, or why the tree's hush felt like a voice pressing through the bark itself. He snatched up the lantern and ran. He ran until the fog thinned and the familiar silhouettes of houses came into view. Only when he reached the first door did he slow enough to notice his hands were shaking. He kept the lantern close like a small, hot heart. The next morning, his parents found him in the courtyard. his hair and clothes still damp from the foggy night and dewy morning. He was still clutching the lantern, its flame long spent, leaving only the memory of cold light in the air. Arjun was in a state of shock for days, unable to speak. He refused to utter a single word, to recount what he had seen, or rather, what he hadn't. In the days to come, he slowly recovered, but his voice remained quiet. He went back to the town, did his job, and lived a simple life. But in the evenings, he would often be lost in unknown thoughts, staring into the horizon, listening intently, as if waiting to hear the same voice call out to him. The elders say the banyan does not do harm for sport. It does not reach out to frighten for the sake of fear. The whispers they teach are a kind of claim, a way the old thing marks itself where it has stood for so long. It asks for company, for a name to remember. And sometimes, on foggy nights, the village keeps its lanterns bright and its doors very thoroughly latched. If you ever find yourself walking under a tree that seems to watch, if roots make little rooms and the wind speaks like a voice, do not sit there to listen. There are places that never sleep, and there are stories that prefer to keep those places awake. Sometimes, at the edge of fields, when the night carries the scent of wet earth, you can still hear, if you listen well enough, someone whispering,
Stay.
Thank you for listening. There are more stories waiting. So subscribe, and I'll